Hey guys, John with the Boat Trader Podcast here. Wanted to thank you for joining us on the podcast. We are starting off a brand new season, the 2025 podcast recording season. We're going to be dropping episodes on a more regular basis. We're excited to get this back going again, and it's going to be much the same as what we've done in the past. We're going to be talking about archery hunting. We're going to be talking about shooting bows, setting up new equipment. We're going to be talking about what it's like getting out in the field, how to interact with others, interacting with God in our vertical relationship with Him, the creator of the universe that wants to have a relationship with each one of us. So those are the things we're going to be talking about. We're excited that you're joining us, exciting that you're listening. We want you to share your feedback with us. Let us know what you want to hear, what topics you want us to cover, and we're just super excited that we get to share this time with you. So buckle up, enjoy the ride, and we'll get this rolling. God bless. Okay, all right. So first episode of 2025 of the Boat Trader Podcast. I'm excited to get this thing going again.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, so, all right, so you guys are hearing a new voice. Maybe not. Maybe this is the first time you've ever listened since it has been so long since we recorded. But I've got Brandon Williams here with me. And Brandon, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
There you go. Look at that. Right on cue. Man, this guy follows directions. I love it. So, Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name's Brandon Williams. I'm the pastor over at Connection Church Statesboro, and I've been doing that now for, it's crazy, but 16 years. Started that church, over in our house. We used to live out in the Middle Ground community, if you're familiar with the Bullitt County area, and started with about 11 people, and 16 years later, somehow we're still going, and God's just been faithful through so many things, and it's just been incredible. In some ways, it feels like it's been 16 days. In other times, it feels like it's been 160 years. But God is the consistent thing that we've seen, just His faithfulness as we've moved forward, and my family's been a huge part of that. My wife would have never made it without her. Her name's Susan, and then I've got 3 boys. Dake, not Drake or Dak, but Dake, D-A-K-E, and Jackson and Reed. So we've just been so blessed, man. And not that everything's been easy, not that every circumstance has been perfect, but God's brought us through it all. And think about where Paul says all the things that he's been through, and he says, yet God's delivered us from them all, and He'll continue to deliver us. And I know seeing God's past faithfulness gives me a lot of faith for the future.
Yeah.
And what He's going to do.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Man, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that part of your story, and I can definitely understand the quip of sometimes it feels like 16 days and sometimes it feels like 160 years.
That's right.
Man, just anytime you're doing, starting something afresh and from scratch, so to speak, my goodness, it can be an adventure. Let's just put it there.
It is. Sometimes it's like having a tiger by the tail, even today.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're just trying to keep up.
Yeah, so, yeah. The thing about that tiger is the other end of it bites.
That's it. So,
man, well, good deal. So, all right, so we're going to start out. We're going to just talk about bow season a little bit. I mean, when we got together this morning, we kind of, we're amazed that bow season is coming to a close.
Yeah.
I mean, it is basically over. It ends here in Georgia for the most part on Sunday, this coming Sunday. I don't know when this episode will be posted, but today's date is January 9th. So it goes out on Sunday, and man, it's been a crazy season for me. It really has. I've drawn on more deer this year than I have in any other single season, and not been able to take a shot. Yeah. And that is so frustrating.
Well, I've drawn on maybe 2 or 3 that I never got a shot at, but I'm just, At least you got to draw.
Yeah, that's true.
For me, it's been one of those seasons that, and a lot of people I talk to, it's just like you said, it's been a really weird season. I think there's probably a lot of factors that played into that, but it's just been one of those things where it's been a different year for sure. So, I'm like you. It's been definitely odd in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I think that storm. Well, we had a couple storms come through our local area. One of them, the whole world knows about when Helene came through and the devastation that it caused in Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee. We didn't right here in our local area. I mean, we were affected by it some, but further west of us, and then up, of course, like towards Augusta and things like that, man, it was devastating.
Really, really bad. And as you travel through the state of Georgia, you see that, going through even around Toombs County, around Lyons, Vidalia. I mean, what they got from that storm was way more than what even we got, and they're not that far west of us,
right,
and north of us in that way. And so when you look at that, it really was a game changer in people's lives, one, but in the deer season.
Yeah.
And that storm, plus we had the tropical storm come through before that dropped. There was water in places I've never seen water in. I've been here since 1985. Yeah,
there were some spots that got 22, 23 inches of rain.
Right.
So we had I mean, we didn't intend for this to be a weather episode, but I mean, you almost can't talk about 2024 without talking about the weather. We had so many weather events where we had just ridiculous amounts of rain in 2024. And we look at it and we say, well, why is that a big deal when you're talking about archery or you're talking about bow season? Well, I mean, people got to live their lives.
That's right.
And when you're faced with, loss of property and, not even to the point of, okay, all your trees are blown down where you were hunting. All right. Yeah, that stinks. Especially, like we've had some folks come in that they had these beautiful pieces of property that had these huge hardwood creek bottoms on it and show us pictures of the creek bottom with 0 trees standing.
Right.
And I mean, that's something that in our lifetimes, it'll never look like that.
It's not going to change next year.
Yeah. I mean, some of those trees were a couple hundred years old.
That's right.
So I mean, it's not like you go out there and replant and everything's good to go.
Right.
I mean, so it was just a big deal, and that affected people's lives. We had a lot of people that were out of power and everything for weeks.
Yeah.
And I think when that one storm came through, Helene, which it was forecasted not to come to our area.
Right.
It did not pay attention to the meteorologist, and it didn't follow the path that they expected. And that next day, so it came through on us like 2:00 in the morning or something like that. And that next day, we get up and cell phones aren't working. Nothing's working because there's no power anywhere. Yeah. And that next night, you walk outside and there's no lights on.
Yeah,
and it's like
a wild feeling.
Yeah, it's like you were in the middle of the desert somewhere.
Right.
You see these pictures that people will take of the stars at night out there where there's no light, keeping you from being able to see it. And it was like that here for the first time I've ever seen that in my entire life.
Right.
And that was just unreal. You can go online and Google it or whatever and look at images of the U.S. at night during that time frame, and the whole state of Georgia, the whole southeast corner of Georgia was completely dark.
Yeah. We were without power for maybe 10 days.
Yeah.
I kept watching our EMC map of outages. We made it down. I think there were 25,000 to start with.
Well, they were 100% outage.
Yeah, and we were number 131 to come back on. I think it was 131.
Oh my goodness!
So we live on a dirt road. We're the only house on that dirt road, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
they've got to get these bigger areas before they come, to get that one house. But those guys, and I talked to a lot of them, but those guys to me were heroes.
Absolutely.
And, man, just giving so much time to get everything back online and get us back to our normal lives,
Yeah.
So it really makes you realize how blessed you really are when you go without power for 10 days. And and I think that was a huge player in the season, because not just that it disrupted people's lives so they couldn't hunt, but you think about the change in habitat.
Yeah.
You went from places that at one point in time was probably not good for deer laying, and all of a sudden you've got treetops everywhere that deer can lay in.
Right.
So that was a huge thing. I think we had, as you said, 3 major weather events that dropped probably 10 plus inches of rain. So water's up and down. And then on the other side of that, we were in a drought.
Right.
Other than getting these just deluges of water.
Yeah.
And so there was just so many things. We had I think it was a really large acorn crop this year.
Yeah.
I think that probably affected behavior. It was hot
Yeah.
all the way into mid-November.
Yeah.
And just most people I talked to have said, whether it was, with a firearm or with a bow, that this year has just been one of the tougher seasons that they have. And I think a lot of people quit hunting early.
Yeah.
Because of that, just out of frustration.
Just getting frustrated with it. Yeah. I could see that. So, for us in the shop, we never know what to expect.
Right.
We forecast and we budget and we try to do things. We try to make sure we have inventory and all this kind of stuff. And we didn't really know what to expect out of 2024. Right. And, with it being an election year, throw that into the mix
so
of everything
else.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it was so it was an interesting year for us. New bow sales was still, it was still good. It was still positive and everything. Service work was really big, but it was just, it was definitely a different year. There wasn't that same, I don't even know how to put my finger on it. There wasn't that same sense of urgency with everybody. I mean, you would have it with some, but it wasn't, it wasn't like it has been in years past.
Just the excitement was down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was good. It was good. So the 2024 deer season for me has been completely unproductive.
Yeah. It happens, man, especially when you're bow only.
Yeah. I don't pick up a gun for anything until it's time to go duck hunting.
Right.
And, man, it was, I have drawn on more deer this year than I ever have without taking a shot. I haven't taken a single shot all season. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, I know that happens. I did have a target buck, which I wouldn't, in the eyes of most people, they wouldn't say, oh man, that's a trophy.
Right.
But to me, I mean, it's just, you've seen the deer.
Yes.
It's just a really funky, crazy looking deer, and he's old. And this is the second or third year we've had him on camera, and he's grown, but he still has this anomaly where he's got basically a cow horn on one side. If he was a typical symmetrical deer, he'd be a mainframe 10.
Right.
And he would look, and then he would be a trophy to most people, right? But now he's got 5 on one side, and he's got this crazy cow horn thing on one side with a big club on the end of it, with this crazy looking brow tine that comes off to the side, and I'm just like, this guy's taking up way too much of my brain space this year. I'll just put it that way.
Right.
I'll put it that way. And we've had our opportunities. He gave me my opportunity. I mean, he was at 7 steps from my tree, and I saw him. It was right at dark, and I saw him coming, and like I said, it was right dark. He was 30 yards away from me when I saw him to start with, and I was like, I don't think that's him. It was a bigger bodied deer, but I didn't think it was him. And then he comes walking towards me, and he kind of like swoops down to go underneath this limb. And as soon as he did that, I saw his rack. And at that point, he's less than 10 yards from me.
Right.
So he looks away. I go to draw, as I'm going to draw, he didn't hear or see or smell me or anything. The wind was blowing in my face, and he just looked the other way. So I had to stop at like third draw, which is not exciting. And so I'm sitting there like that, and then he starts walking. And as he's walking, he's getting closer to me. I mean, when I say 7 steps, I don't mean 7 yards. I mean like 7 normal walking steps
right
from the base of my tree. And, you know, he comes walking by, and as he gets next to me, I finally get to full draw, and I'm following him with my pen. And then as I rotate around, there's a tree right behind me, and he walks right past that tree.
Yeah.
And then there was just no shot, you know. And I'm not going to take a marginal shot.
Sure.
I don't care if it's a doe. I don't care if it's a hog. You know, maybe I do it on a coyote, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So let back down. That was the second time I had drawn on something and had to let down this season. And then, man, my son Wes, who most of you know, he has been on fire this year. I mean, he's killed 5 or 6. He got one really nice buck that I'll never forget that phone call. Yeah. When he called, he's like, Dad, and, you know, couldn't breathe. And I said, hey, are you okay? Did you fall out of the tree or something? Yeah. Which I knew he didn't, but I had to ask. Because his mama was standing right there.
Yeah,
he said, no, Dad, I just killed the biggest buck. I said, all right. I said, good. I said, where you at? He told me he was on the creek or whatever. I said, just sit right there. He said, what do you mean? I said, stay right there until I get there. He's like, Dad, you're in Sylvania. What do you mean? It's going to take you an hour to get here. I said, no, I'm in the truck. I'm on the way. I said, you stay in the tree until I get there. Yeah. And I'll come to you, and then I'm going to go find your arrow, and you're going to stay in the tree until, because it was getting dark, you know. Right. And I didn't want to lose his deer.
That's it, right? 100%.
You know, so, and when I got down there to the creek, his Miss D, his mom, actually walked down there with me because she was over the moon excited. And we walked down in there, and I walked to his arrow. And when I bent down to pick his arrow up, I saw that white belly.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't tell him.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, come down. You know, I stuck the arrow in the ground, and I said, there's blood right here. Come on down. And so he rappelled down and walks over there. So I made him track the deer. I wouldn't just say, dude, it's sitting 25 yards. It's right there, you know. So he started looking for blood, and he found it, and he started tracking it. And, you know, he walked maybe 10 yards, and he saw it. And I thought he was going to come unseen.
Oh, man. Those are special times.
Yep. It was really cool. And now that guy has been feeding our family and is hanging here in the store.
That's great.
You know, we carried that down to Old River Road Taxidermy. Mm-hmm. They had that deer done in 10 days.
That's incredible.
Man, yeah, they texted me and they said, we got this one, we got your son's done. I was like, what do you mean? You know, I mean, that was my response. He said 10 days too not long enough. I was like, man, that's perfect. Yeah. But we carried 3 to him. And so I went back. I said, hey, is it okay? You know, can I come when all of them are ready? Because Mr. Charles, who's getting ready to turn 87.
Right.
He killed a buck last year, and we got that mounted for him. Yeah. Because, you know, he's like, oh, it's not that big, or, you know, whatever. But, you know, he's 87 years old.
87, that's impressive.
You know, I mean, it's worth it. So he's got it hanging in his home gym.
How about that?
Yeah, he's got his own little gym set up and everything. So
that's great.
Yeah, really cool stuff. Yeah. Really cool stuff.
That's good.
But we've heard all kinds of, you know, really cool stories this year. We've had some people. Just last week, one of our customers harvested the biggest buck of his life. Wow. With a bow. And I think it was actually out on Fort Stewart. Wow. I haven't talked with him about it yet, but I think that's what he told me in the message, and it scored like 134 or something like that. So I mean, that's really good for you know, what is essentially public land out on the military base out there. So that was really cool that he got to do that. But well, you got to travel some this year.
I did. You know, deer season was one thing. Was able to kill one old 8-point. It wasn't a massive deer. horn-wise, but he was a good buck. I actually shot him at like 8 yards. So he a younger buck came through, and I actually drew on him. I couldn't tell exactly what he was. I could tell he had a decent rack, and so I drew on him on the left side of the tree. Well, I hear something on the right side of the tree. I'm in full draw. I look over, and it's this mature deer. And so he's coming towards me, kind of like what you said. He happened to go behind a tree for a second. So in full draw, I had to swing my bow around the tree and shot him at 8 yards. I think he ran about 100 yards, and that's where we found him. But that was October 10th. And so the rest of the season has just been a grind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we did, though, get to travel. I've always wanted for my oldest son to be able to take him on a archery trip.
And that's Dake, right?
That's Dake,
okay.
Right. Yeah, and so he's almost done with college. He, graduated high school, and so I wanted to do something special for him. And we had opportunity to go out to Colorado, kind of southwest Colorado, a little bit south and west of Denver, and went out there on a archery elk hunt. And both of us had tags, I think it may have changed this coming year, but last year and years past, you could just buy them over the counter.
Yep.
And so we went out with an outfitter, and he was able to harvest it was about a 280-inch elk, which obviously is not massive, but it was a good elk.
Oh, yeah.
And that story was incredible. We were hunting a river bottom, and our guide was phenomenal. We had 4 elk in this one area. There were other guys that were having a harder time getting on elk, and I credit a lot of that to our guide. His name was Roman. And so we're hunting what they called a river bottom, and it's very different than river bottoms here. There was actually no river. But it was dry out there at that time, and so there was no water, but it's just extremely thick, and not briary thick like it is here, but just very brittle scrub brush all over the place. Some of it, maybe 10, 12 feet high, and you're trying to sneak through this. And so you'd have to find these meadows, basically, that you'd have a chance to call elk in. And so we put Dake out on the sort of a point in one of these meadows, and we had 3 different elk bugling at the same time. I mean, you talking about your heart racing. And so I slipped down a little lane kind of behind Roman as he was calling in case they circle back around. Well, I can hear a cow calling coming straight at me. And turned out that the elk he shot, the bull was behind this cow. And so I'm literally trying to just get as small as I can behind a bush because I just didn't want to, mess up the hunt.
Yeah.
And so, I hear the bow, I hear the smack, and I hear Dake go, "Let's go!" And so he jumps up and he's fist pumping, and Roman's, waving at him, get down, because there's still elk around us bugling.
Oh, yeah.
And so we could have actually doubled up. I went and slipped ahead of him then on the edge of a thicket, and little 4x4 comes in, and I passed him. I was like, I feel like if I shot him, I wouldn't even want to put him on Facebook. So, and I had 4 opportunities to shoot that same elk.
Really?
Yeah, and I just there was one we saw that we had glassed one day, saw it was about 340. And so I told Roman, I'm like, I want to go home with that one or go home without one.
Okay.
And he's like, it's going to be tough. I was like, yeah, let's just give it a shot. And didn't work out, but, man, we had a blast. We had that elk probably within 80 yards 3 times, and he just wouldn't come out of the thicket.
Yeah.
And which is why he's 340.
Yeah.
And but when Dake shot that elk, we heard the smack. Roman and I both did. And so we go up there after it's all kind of over, and we're like, "Did you hit him good?" He goes, "Yeah." And Roman said, "Did you hear him fall?" And Dake said, "Yeah." And he said, "So you think he's down?" He goes, "I know he's down." And he said, well, how do you know? He said, because he's laying right there.
Oh my gosh.
So he shoots this elk with an arrow that, obviously archery, the arrow just obliterated both lungs, and you actually helped us get that set up.
Yeah.
And, it was heavy arrow, 125 broadhead, and it just annihilated the lungs on this elk. And he shot the elk at 30 yards. It ran 20 yards and fell over dead.
Wow.
Roman, who guides in Colorado and New Mexico, said it was the shortest distance he's ever seen a archery shot elk run. And, man, it was so exciting. We got to take pictures. We actually were able to drive his pickup truck down into this meadow. The other bulls and cows had slipped off. We drive down in there. Somehow me, Dake, and Roman were able to load this elk without field dressing it.
Oh my gosh.
Into the back of this truck. I got pictures of it. It was insane. I don't know how we got this elk.
I don't either.
And we were able to pull out of there and never spook the elk. We hunted those same bulls the next day. And that was the third hunt. I think we had a total of 10 hunts.
Okay.
And we were hunting them until the last day. And so it was a blast. It was kind of like when Wes shot the big buck, man.
Yeah.
That's a memory that I'll have forever, and I believe Dake will too. It's just one of those special times, once in a lifetime kind of thing, maybe for me. But it was just incredible to see the happiness on his face. I think the only time I've seen him smile more is he got engaged this past Sunday.
Okay.
And he's been grinning from ear to ear.
So she said yes then.
Luckily, she said yes. We had a sign hanging up when they got to where we were going to have a little get-together for them, and it said, she said yes. And I asked them, I said, y'all have a backup plan? And so I didn't know if I'd sit on the other side of the sign. It needs to say things didn't go as we thought they would.
So you just flip it around?
You just flip it around and, put up the black balloons instead of the gold and silver or whatever. But so it was a special time. We had just an incredible time out there, and something we'll never forget. And so deer season wasn't that great. Dake didn't kill a deer this year, which is rare for him, and we're archery only as well. We just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just the challenge of it.
Yeah.
I learned more when I went to archery only. I think I learned more about deer behavior in 1 year than I probably have the rest of my life.
Yeah, you're forced to.
You got to, and and the first thing you really learn is you're not going to beat the wind.
I can promise you that.
I think
you're not going to beat that deer's nose.
No,
never, when we look at how God made the white-tailed deer,
yes.
all right, He gave that animal some incredible senses to preserve its life.
Absolutely.
And that nose is number one.
100%. It's incredible, and and people who listen to this probably listen to other podcasts of just the biology of a deer's nose, and just how it's made, but also how you really can't throw it off.
Mm-hmm.
There's products you can put on and spray and do all that, but at the end of the day, if he gets downwind of you, it's kind of one of those things that is game over.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
So you learn so much about it, and it's been pretty rare that Dake has not killed something with his bow, but he's like you. I don't even know how many he drew on this year.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun. Still had a blast. One thing that I have really tried to focus on is, even in years that I'm not seeing as many deer, or I'm not feeling like I have a chance at a good mature buck, there's something I can learn every single time I go in the woods. There's something I can practice every time I go in the woods, whether it's my approach, how quiet can I be getting to the tree, how quiet can I be climbing the tree, how quiet can I be getting out, just all sorts of things that every time you go in the woods, there's something to learn. And so I would have rather been going in thinking I was going to kill a big deer, but a lot of what I did this year was practice.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But
man, I tell you, the preparation that we put in, like for instance, Wes, I'll talk about him a lot as far as archery goes. That kid shoots his bow more than anybody I know. Right. I mean, he's already picked his new bow for 2025.
Wow.
And, it's that I think that's his favorite thing about his dad having a bow shop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is he gets to, because he's working in the bow shop and he's talking with customers and helping them do their setups and all that kind of stuff. So, we always want to be shooting whatever the newest stuff is so we can be sharing, hey, this is our experience with it. This is, what we see out of it or whatever. And so he's already got his bow that he's going to be shooting for the 2025 season, and it's January 9th. Let's remember that. Yeah. I bet you he has 4,000 shots through that bow.
That's incredible.
I mean, it is absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
That he's got that many shots through that bow already. And the preparation, not only in shooting your bow, but getting all your equipment like it needs to be, and building your arrows out like you want them to be, and everything, which is. It's super important. I mean, if you don't have the right arrow set up, man, I don't care what deer walks in front of you.
No.
I mean, you track.
Yes.
And you've seen the stuff.
Yes.
that I've only heard about.
Yeah.
Right? Because you go out with somebody, they're sometimes they've been looking for hours and they can't find anything, and you've got these dogs that are awesome, and you'll take them out there and let them get after it. What are the things that you see when you're doing that, as far as, I don't want to get like real deep into shot placement and stuff like that, but just what are some of the things you're seeing when you're going out on a track where it was an archery, a bow hunt, that you've noticed that is common, I guess.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it, and not to get too deep into shot placement, but some of the comments that I'm going to make, everybody has their own preference.
Mm-hmm.
And shot placement with certain setups is going to be the same, right? Regardless of broadhead, regardless of, anything. If you put it in exactly the right place, it's going to kill the deer.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen from tracking some things that are pretty consistent. One of those is I would encourage everybody, even if you lose feet per second, shoot a heavier arrow. Shoot something that when it hits, it is going to bring more impact power. The other thing, and this is just me, and I know people can comment on this, and I'm going to get a lot of comments about how many deer people have killed with mechanical broadheads. I shoot fixed.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is I do believe as those mechanicals open, you lose power. You lose penetration.
Yep.
And so I can't tell you how many deer I've tracked that were hit in the shoulder or even caught part of the shoulder that just did not penetrate enough because that mechanical broadhead maybe a blade caught on that shoulder bone, or it just didn't penetrate through the shoulder bone. And it takes a wallop, obviously, on a mature buck to get through a shoulder bone and get into enough of the lungs to kill. But I get a lot of calls where, especially with mechanicals, found good blood, I got 5 inches or so of penetration, and I'm like, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
Because even with one long, you might hit a long, but unless you hit something that is going to cause that deer to bleed out, a deer can go a long, long ways with one long and even survive with one.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff I've read is where, a deer survives a one long puncture, and sometimes that lung will even just dry up, and they'll live for ever with just one lung. And so my thought on it from tracking is a heavy arrow, a fixed broadhead that's good, that you do have some forgiveness. business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing I tell people is if you're going to miss back. Like, we can find that deer.
Yeah.
If you hit him in the shoulder and you don't get enough penetration, that deer's going to he's going to live. He's just going to keep going unless some type of infection sets in. And then you're still not going to find him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
even
so,
if you do, you're not harvesting that meat.
That's right.
At that point.
That,
That's really the whole point of this.
Yes.
Is put food on the table, provide for your family. Yeah, it's fun to go out and chase a trophy, and
that's right.
The excitement of going after a buck and everything, but our goal is to eat.
Yes. Yes.
and we can't forget that.
Right.
Right.
And
I don't know. I think that that is the part of it for our family.
Right.
I mean, I am A-okay with having a season full of killing 10 does. That's what I'm allowed in Georgia. I mean, obviously I didn't get to do that this year unless something happens, drastically in the next 4 days.
You're going to have exciting 4 days. So.
Yeah, really. But I mean, that's what our goal is, and when we get it all packed up, we process everything ourselves. And, we've come up with all kind of recipes for making, sausage and summer sausage and all these recipes for cooking these big cuts and everything. And that's the exciting part of it. For me really is that, we get to, in March, I get to go pull a big shoulder out and smoke it,
That's right.
And I mean, that's just so much fun to me.
Oh yeah.
And Wes knowing that, man, he provided that for his family.
Absolutely.
And what that's going to mean for him, for the rest of his life. When I look at Wes, it's critically important to me that he understands that his trajectory is that he's going to be providing for a family one day. Right? Okay,
Right.
16 now, what's the point in talking about that? Man, he's an adolescent. You shouldn't even be going there. All right. That is like the fakest thing ever.
Right.
The idea of adolescence, you go from a boy to a man.
Right.
There's no in between.
Right.
That's my stance on it. Okay. And so I am leading him to be a man.
Absolutely.
Right. That's my goal. And teaching him how to go and harvest right now is teaching him life lessons about how he's going to provide for his family 20 years from now.
Right.
And that's not specific to providing food for his family.
Right.
It's teaching him right now, like the preparation that he's putting in, the the way of life he has, about how he approaches this. My goal is to teach him how to take that same passion and put it into, his family one day.
Absolutely.
Well,
and whether it's deer hunting, athletics, academics, you can learn every time you do something, or every day there's life experiences. And I think one of the things you can learn from hunting is the perseverance. A season like this, and I've been grinding it out for the whole season, and it hasn't been great.
Yeah.
But you learn the perseverance, and you learn, the preparation aspect that, a lot of people, and I tell my youngest this, he wants to play college baseball, and it's a big goal of his. And I tell him a lot of times, a lot of people want to be great. Very few people are willing to pay the price to be great.
Yeah.
And I tell him that a lot. And do you just say you want to be really good, or are you willing to work at being really good?
Yeah.
And that translates over to life in every area, especially in your family. One of the things that I talk with a lot of young men about is when they start to have children, especially, you get married and you can go hunting kind of when you want to. It changes a little bit. But you can take a nap kind of when you want to. You can you still got some freedom, in some of that area. At least I did when I got married. But when I had my first child, when Dake came along, it all changed. It's no longer about me. And that wasn't easy. And something I talk to a lot of young men about is, look, you know, life's not easy. And when you start having children and you have the responsibility of a family, you know, children, I tell them all the time, it's the greatest, hardest thing you'll ever do is being a parent.
The greatest, hardest thing. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And, you know,
but you don't have a daughter, though.
No, I don't know what I'd do with a daughter.
You've missed out.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's really interesting though, because it's not easy. And you hear people talk about a lot of times, oh, you know, when my first child was born, it was so incredible and it was such a miracle and they were so beautiful and da 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 da. And I'm in the delivery room and my son's born and I'm like, I mean, he's mine, but he looks like an alien, man. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't have this sense of like, you know, and then you get home and I told my in-laws and my mom, I was like, look, we're going to handle this. We want to be responsible. We don't need help, you know. And when we're leaving the hospital, I turned around and looked at my mom and my mother-in-law, and I'm like, which one of y'all's going with us? You know, because I don't know what to do with this thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt like every time I picked him up, his head was just going to roll off or something, you know? And so, you know, and then there's those 2 hours of sleep a night, and as they grow, and like you said, from being a child to being a man, and you go through all the different seasons, and you're trying to pour into them as children and as young men, and you know, you've got the Bible that gives you a framework and direction on how to raise your kids, but at the end of the day, you don't know 100%, right? Am I getting this right?
Yeah.
I mean, are they going to be, what are they going to tell their therapist one day, right? Like, you know, my dad did this, and I'm like, so you're really looking at that and going, man, I hope I'm getting this right. And God's been so good to us to give us glimpses. And I encourage young parents all the time, just stay faithful in the things that you know to do. The same as hunting. Stay true to what you know is best practices, and you'll get glimpses, right? Your son, your daughter will walk in your bedroom before they go to bed and ask you a question about a scripture, or they'll begin to ask questions about God, or they'll, you know, one of mine's even talked about ministry and stuff like that. And so, not easy, but so worth it. And you know, you get to where I'm at now. I'm 49 years old. My kids are 21, 18, and 14, and you begin to see a little fruit from what you've put in for all those years. And that's when you realize, okay, there were some tough times. There were times I didn't feel like doing the right thing, and I didn't always do the right thing, but God's been really faithful. So,
man, there's no doubt about that. That if I was gonna list the attributes of God, you know, just write them down on a sheet of paper. The first one I would say is holy.
Yes.
The second one I'd say is faithful.
Yes. I mean, you just see all of that, and just in life in general, through the good, the bad, you know, the tough, and he's just good. Yeah.
You know, we talk about making decisions with raising our kids, raising our family, leading our family. The reality is, you know, we all have to make a lot of decisions every single day.
Yes.
I mean, that is what life is a bunch of decisions strung together. Right. And man, I just feel like I only make a couple good ones a day. You know, I mean, I mean, seriously, not just cutting up about it, but I mean, so often you just feel like you didn't make the best decision in a situation, or you know, I think that desire to make good decisions it's what will wake me up at night.
Right.
You know, wondering, hey, did I am I making the right choice about this? Did I make sure I followed through on that? Did I forget about this or whatever? And I'm not a list guy. I don't keep lists of stuff. I don't write down, I don't have a list of things I'm going to do today. I'll make notes, and so I won't forget something. And I've gotten better about that over the years because I had to.
Yeah. Understand.
And I think about some of the things that have helped me, because I'm like you in the fact of where we are in our family, right? So my daughter she's going to be 20 this year. My son will be 17 this year. So I don't want to say we're nearing the end of that roller coaster ride,
right.
But in a lot of ways we are.
Right.
There's going to be a transition period sometime very soon where it's going to be from, them being very dependent on dad to not being as dependent, right? And, you just look back at that wondering, making sure that you did the things that you should have done, because sometimes, listen, you have to have some pretty uncomfortable conversations with your kids, because the stakes are high. We want, I want my life to be a reflection of who God is.
Right.
That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I am his ambassador.
Right.
Okay. And so the way that I treat people matters, and the way that they treat people matters.
Right.
And I've learned, with dealing with people are usually very reasonable.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
People are usually very reasonable, but then there comes this time where, if you don't know what you believe, it causes you to be very unreasonable about things.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was always something that was really important to me, was making sure that, and still making sure that my kids, that my family, we know why we believe what we believe.
Right.
Like, it's not good enough for me to just, all right, I'm going to take my kids to church, and we're going to go to church every time the door's open. We're going to be there, and all that kind of stuff. Now, there was a time where, they're young, and we're trying to build that foundation for them. Man, if the church was open, we were there.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we had them there in doing their things. And, but as they've grown, I'm still there. I'm still active and doing things, but I'm not forcing that on them. Exactly. And the kind of questions I go, and kind of start posing to them more often is, well, why do you believe that? Mm-hmm. Or why do you think this is the right choice to make right now? I want, in your words, not because what I say, not because what you think your buddy's going to think. What I really want them to do is based on, well, how does God look at this?
That's right.
Right? How do we, because how God looks at something is truth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how do we take whatever situation we're in and then lay it up against that standard of truth?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And because if we do that, if we get into that place where that's what we're doing, that's the way we're kind of measuring life, then we'll be found faithful.
Yes.
And that should truly be our goal, is to be found faithful. When I talk about listing the attributes of God and faithful being way, way up there, that's what I want, right. And we can get into and I'm sure at some point we will get into a deep conversation about, what this life is and what our trajectory is and where we're going. Sure. And all that kind of stuff. I mean, those are all important things for us to talk about. But I think that, like I said earlier, it is stringing those decisions together and making sure you're basing those decisions on the right thing.
Right.
And the reality is we are not perfect.
No, and we're going to mess up.
We're going to hurt people.
Yes.
We're going to forget about things that we really didn't need to forget about. That's why I started taking notes.
Yeah.
The Notes app on my phone, I did an update on my phone late last year, like November or something like that, and I pulled my Notes app up, and nothing was there.
No. Oh no.
And I don't get stressed out and stuff. I mean, maybe I do, and I don't realize it because I'm dumb. I don't know, but
I can relate.
I don't stress over stuff. Dude, I was stressed.
Yeah,
I was like, because I had made notes about stuff I'm working on for people,
right?
Stuff that I needed to follow up with people about. I had people's phone numbers and stuff in there, and it was just gone. I mean, and I went to my computer, so I use Apple products, so everything connects.
Yeah.
Went to my computer, pulled the Notes app up. There was notes in there from 2012.
Yeah.
But there wasn't the note that I made yesterday.
Oh no.
And I'm like, what is going on? You know? And so I just stopped, and I literally stopped and prayed. I said, God, this can't happen right now. I said, I'm sure everything's going to come back, but if it doesn't, I need you to help me remember this stuff because I don't need to fall down on this stuff. And like 30 minutes later, or the next day, actually, I went back and I pulled it back up, and everything was there. And I was like,
yeah,
because I had a list of stuff that I needed to do for my wife that she was like, hey, could we get a couple of these things done? And I was like, yeah, let's make a list about it because I just want to make sure, and I want to prioritize the stuff that you're wanting done and everything. Yeah. And that was an important piece of that puzzle that I didn't want to lose.
Yeah, I'm like you. I have to, if I don't write it down, I can't remember it.
Yeah.
So I keep it in my phone also. And I think what you said, going back to, we're going to make mistakes. One thought I have about that is, we're not going to be perfect parents. We're not going to be perfect husbands. One of the things I think that's really huge for us as leaders in anything, but also especially with our family, is the ability for them to see us repent.
Yeah.
To see us say, I messed up. I'm sorry. I should have done this. Whether it's with them, because I remember when one of my sons was young and I was backing out of the driveway and we were in a hurry. His door was open, hits the basketball goal. It was one of those that you just fill up with water in the base, knocks the basketball goal over. It slides down the side of my truck. I'm not happy, and as we leave, I realize, like, I need to apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't handle that well.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a pressure to be perfect, which is really an unrealistic expectation that I think can be really discouraging and almost make you sometimes want to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage people with, and I have to remind myself of, and need other people to remind me of, is, just repent, move on.
Yeah.
Realize it's not going to be perfect. And I think that teaches our children and people around us more about God and who we are than getting it right every time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really big. The other thing I would say too is to encourage parents, husbands, leaders in any aspect that it's not too late. Because, for you and I, we had the fortune, the blessing of being able to have a good foundation to begin on. Mostly as parents, husbands, we kind of knew the direction we wanted to go, even though we didn't get it right all the time. I run into a lot of people who, man, their kids are in their teens, and they just now are starting to realize, oh, wow, there's a lot I should have poured in that I missed. And then they're teens, they're awkward enough, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you start? And my encouragement is just, awkwardness never killed anybody.
Yeah.
Just try as best you can to take some steps, just one step. And remember, even for us who we've tried to do this for years, you don't have to take 100 steps. Just take one.
Yeah.
Just engage this in some way.
Yeah.
Because,
like don't if your family doesn't camp.
Right.
Okay, if that's not a thing, well, then don't plan a big camping trip to try to connect with your kids.
Right.
You know, that's probably not going to end well.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I love camping and getting out and just like being, as much as I love power and stuff like that, I still love getting out there and roughing it.
Right.
But don't. The point is, you don't have to go to this crazy extreme. I mean, it can be. Like you said, just take a step. Figure out a step and take it.
For some people, it may be as simple as you never said the blessing.
Yeah.
Next time you sit down to have a meal, pray.
Yeah.
And you might not get the prayer perfect, right? It's okay. Like, God knows. I remember one day we were sitting at the dinner table, and my dad was on the other end of the table, and he said the blessing, and I couldn't hear a word he said. Like, it was mumbled to me. I couldn't hear it. And I said, I was kind of laughing. I said, Dad, I couldn't hear anything you said. And he said, I wasn't talking to you. And so, you might not get it perfect, but it's okay. And it could be something that simple. And, and I'm a big believer, find community with people who are doing those things, who are a step or two ahead, and find encouragement in that. You don't have to do these things alone.
Yeah.
And but just start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say this: if you're at a point in your family, and because we are talking about leading your family and leading well, if you're at a point in your family and you feel like you're not, like you want to make some changes, you want to implement some new things, pray.
Yes.
Start with prayer. And asking God to to help you know how to do this, asking Him to prepare the hearts of your family.
That's right.
Start right there.
Right.
Pray the devil away from your family.
Absolutely.
Prayer is not only us talking to God; it is us doing battle with the devil.
Yes.
Okay, and so one of my studies that I'm doing right now, I'm going through the book of Job, and I've made it like 4 verses so far.
Yeah.
And it takes time when you really get into doing this. And I think one of the things that's intimidating about the Bible is you look back at these characters, these people that are in the Bible, and you're like, man, he was perfect. I mean, how can I compare to that?
Right.
All right. So I don't normally do this, but I want to look at the book of Job, and I'm going to be reading from the New King James. It says, this is Job chapter 1, verse 1. He says, there was a man in the land of Uz, not Oz, not on the Yellow Brick Road,
right,
in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. So stop right there. Oh my goodness, he's out of my league. This is not the same category that I'm in.
Right.
And that can be intimidating. And somebody can read that and be like, how am I supposed to lead my family when I've got this guy over here that I'm supposed to compare myself to? All right. Well, let's really look at what it means to be blameless and upright.
Right.
Okay. So, and I've gone through and I've made some notes on this as I'm trying to understand this, as I'm trying to get to a place of understanding, who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to strive for, because Jesus came here and he lived a sinless life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the only one to ever do that.
And absolutely. He was the only one to ever do that. And he did that to give us a model, right? I mean, man, if you need some encouragement, go read some of the parables of Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, he mixed laughter into the things that he was saying. He used his surroundings to talk with people.
Right.
When he talked about look at the birds, You know, he was in the Israeli flyway when he said that.
Right.
You know, when he said that, there was birds everywhere.
Right.
I mean, think about being in Mississippi or Arkansas. Like, go to Arkansas right now. There are snow geese everywhere.
Right.
Ad nauseum, there are snow geese.
Yeah. Look
right.
at the snow geese.
Yeah. And he's like, go out there and look at them. They don't worry about what they're going to put on.
Right.
They don't worry about what they're going to eat.
That's right.
Because their Father's going to provide for them.
Yeah.
When we look at our relationship with God, everything he created, he did it so we would have a place to live.
Right.
You know, the whole earth he created so we would have a place to live.
Yeah.
So we would have a domain.
Right.
Because we are his prized possession.
Yeah.
We are his poetry, right?
Right.
He wants an intimate relationship with every single one of us, so much so that he was willing to turn his back on his son.
Right.
And let the sin of all of us,
past, present, and future,
be, laid on his shoulders.
Absolutely.
And God had to turn away when that happened.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" Right? He had to. He couldn't look. He couldn't look on him when the sin of the world was laid on his shoulders, because he's holy.
And the whole wrath of God falling on Jesus for the sin.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a little lie here or there.
Yeah.
It was the worst, grossest sin
It was everything
anyone could commit, and so much so that creation reacted through earthquakes, the sky going dark.
Yep.
And we see that Jesus took that wrath so we wouldn't have to.
Right.
We see that Jesus was condemned so we wouldn't have to be. And such an incredible thing. And the brilliance of the gospel is, and I believe John Stott is the one that I read who said this, it was God's righteous way of making the unrighteous righteous. And I think that's such an incredible statement and such brilliance in the gospel. So
That's really good.
you were talking about Job and reading that, and he was upright and he was good. And, I tell our folks a lot, that the only people that God used in the Bible who were imperfect were all of them.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And they all had flaws.
I mean, look at Paul.
Oh, gosh.
Good grief, man. And look at David, who God said was a man after his own heart. So let's go back to Job. It talked about him being blameless and upright. That does not mean he was sinless.
Right.
That does not mean he didn't make mistakes or didn't make a bad choice or a bad decision about something. Yeah, Job was, man, he was highly favored. He had, in terms of financial welfare, he was doing really well.
Really good.
And in that day and time, a big family was a sign of God's blessing. And dude, he had a big family.
Yeah.
But within a couple days, everything was taken away.
Right.
In this story. But to get back to Job's character, that's what I've been drilling down on and focusing on so far as I've gone through this study. And, like I said, I mean, reading that, it feels intimidating. It feels awkward. Right. And like you said, awkwardness has never killed anybody. Right. It may make you feel like dying.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's never killed anybody. And when you really, when you really start, for me, when I really start, diving into Job's character, who he is and everything, man, it is, like I said, it is intimidating. But then when you really start breaking it down, he's blameless and upright, okay? Yeah. Which means he purposed in his heart to make right choices,
right, to
treat people the right way,
yeah,
right? That doesn't mean, hear me now, that doesn't mean that everything always turned out perfect.
No, not at all.
All right. Yeah. And then the next part of that was he was one who feared God and shunned evil.
Yeah.
All right. So if we're going to get, like, I mentioned David, and David was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah. What
in the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a man after God's heart?
Right.
And I mean, I think at its simplest, and maybe that's the way that we truly should look at it. It means to love what God loves and to hate what God hates.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of things that God says he hates.
Yeah. And I think about that, to be after God's heart. I think I even go back, one of the first scriptures the Lord really revealed to me when I got saved, I gave my life to Christ, was Matthew 6:33, to just seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And how simple is that? But just a desire for him, and you read Psalm 51 after David's had an affair with Bathsheba, and his cry is, don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Don't take your presence from me.
Yeah.
Create in me a clean heart, restore the joy of my salvation. In other words, God, the most important thing to me is my relationship with you. And we're all, like the song says, we're all prone to wander.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, is where the word keeps us grounded. Community keeps us grounded. Staying focused, like you were talking about, where that book occupied too much of your mind.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I get occupied with things, but at the forefront, those things may be in a part of our mind. And I think God enjoys us enjoying his creation, but at the forefront, man, it's him.
Yeah.
And I look at Job, I look at all he went through and the temptations, and yet I get to the end of Job, and how faithful was God through it all in the end. And I love the part where Job finally begins to really complain some, and God's like, where were you when I created all this?
Man, he goes through this encyclopedia of creation.
Yeah.
So if you're ever curious about creation, yes, Genesis is a very good place, but go to Job.
Yeah, go to the end of Job.
Because he goes through it step by step.
And I love the part where he tells Job, brace yourself like a man. In other words, like, Job, you want to question these things, and it's fine to question, but I'm about to hit you with some real truth.
Yeah.
So brace yourself to receive it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we all need that. And being a man after God's own heart, as you said, it's not being perfect.
Right.
It's the posture of your heart. Am I leaning in towards God, or am I leaning away? And when I do find myself in a place where I'm leaning away, how quick am I to turn back?
Yeah. Or am I making God into something that he's not?
Yeah. Is he a God of my preference?
Yeah.
Or is he the God of the Bible?
Absolutely. Is God this cute, cuddly God that I've got in this box right over here?
Yeah.
Like Christmas, everybody can approach the God in the manger.
Sure.
He's very he's very approachable because he's very safe.
Yes.
Right? And that is the God of the universe in that manger.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let me tell you something. He is not safe.
Yeah.
Okay?
Correct. Yeah.
he is I have no idea what it's going to be like when I stand before him.
Well, we're actually going through a series about God's glory right now,
Mm-hmm.
and taking the whole thing. It's been really fun studying for it, but taking the whole series from the book of Isaiah chapter 6, and you kind of get a glimpse. You have these seraphim, these angels flying around worshiping God, saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The earth is full of his glory." And you see this attribute of holiness that's given to God, his moral perfection, all of his attributes. And then you see that the glory is the manifestation of that holiness. And when that holiness is manifest before them in God's glory, they cover their face with two wings.
Yep.
They cover their feet, which I believe represents sort of the worst part of us, right? And then they're flying around with two wings.
Yeah.
And so their worship was so active. And, because God is so other, there's nothing else that's like him, no one else who's like him. And so to stand before God, I just think eternity is going to be one revelation after another of who He is, and I don't think we'll ever exhaust it.
No, I don't think it's possible.
No.
I truly don't. So when Isaiah, that's when King Uzziah died, and Isaiah goes into the temple because he had been king for 52 years or whatever, and he goes into the temple because he's like, I've got to go to pray. I've got to. Yeah. I mean, what do we do? That's we don't have a king anymore. Yeah. What do we do?
Yeah.
And he walks into the temple, and instead of it being the temple, it was the throne room of God. Yeah. And I can't. Y'all think Hollywood's come up with some cool stuff?
Yes.
Hollywood don't even come close to this stuff.
Yeah.
But and the other thing that I would say is, when we're trying to get going down the right path with leading our family, with leading in general, hide God's word in our heart.
Yeah.
Because when that time comes and we know we're going to face those situations where we don't really know what to do. We don't know how to respond. If I need to hit the pause button, which by the way doesn't exist on life.
Right. It keeps going.
And go and sit down and read and figure out what the Bible, what God says about how I should do something, I'm probably going to struggle.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying that we don't do that. Yeah, we still go and we still want to know what do we do in certain situations, and I say that, and I don't want to make it sound like, okay, you're offered a new job. Okay, let me go see what it says in 1 Corinthians 2:4 about taking this new job. Well, spoiler alert, it's not there.
Yes.
It's not going to be specific about, yes, you should take that new job at Hyundai and Pooler, Georgia. It's not going to say that, right? But you'll have an understanding about, okay, what does it look like to accept a new job? How do you deal with your current employer? Why would you be looking for new employment? Is it that you don't have a job anymore? Is it that you're in a position where you're being asked to do things that you think are immoral? Then yeah, you should be looking for a new job, right? But make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Right. And if the only reason is chasing more money, that may not be enough of a reason to want to make a change. So those are just some of the things that I would say from a leading standpoint. And I will reiterate this. I am not perfect at this. I struggle with this. I don't ever want to come off as being this authority, that I make all the right choices. I make all the right decisions, because I don't, man. And it's gut wrenching when you realize that you haven't made a good choice. Yeah. Or that you didn't follow through on something that you were supposed to.
Sure.
And you want to talk about awkward or difficult. There are times where when you've made a mistake, you got to go and you got to talk to people.
Right.
And you got to own up to it. First you got to say, God, I've sinned against you. Yeah. I've made a mistake. I know I've acted in a way that's inconsistent with your character.
Right.
And I want my character to match yours. Right. Start there.
Right.
And then you go and you talk to that person, whether it be your son or your wife or a friend or a coworker or somebody that you're doing business with, and just be humble.
Yeah.
And say, listen, I messed up.
Yeah.
This is what I did. And don't make excuses.
Right.
Excuses are not. They're I don't want to say they're worthless, but it doesn't matter. Just own up to the mistake. An excuse to me really belittles the situation.
Right. Yeah.
Making it like, I did this, but
yeah, he's just not owning it. It's still, you're kind of looking out the window to blame something rather than looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, this is me.
Yep, it's exactly right. My pastor at church is John Waters, and he talks about how his mom would say, he loves telling stories about his mom, and he said that his mom would say, whatever comes after the but in a sentence is what they really wanted to say. So everything before the but was, I'm admitting to this and everything, but I really had a lot going on. No. Yeah. What you're trying to forgive yourself instead of actually asking for forgiveness from the person, right? Or actually asking forgiveness from God. God, I know I made a mistake with this, and I know that this wasn't the way that I needed to do this, but I really needed that new truck. Hold on. I know I've put my family in a bad financial position by doing this, but man, that truck just looks good. That's not a humble posture, right? Or going to your son and saying, man, I overreacted when I backed into that basketball goal.
Absolutely.
But you should have had your dang door closed. Yes. All right, hang on.
Yeah.
His door wasn't closed. You were driving. You should have noticed his door wasn't closed, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm not picking on you. I'm just that was a situation that was brought. Listen, I've had hundreds of those and over the years of raising my family where, the reality is I should have made sure something was done, not made sure my 7-year-old son did something.
I mean, it's like, and I remember we were hunting one time, and my youngest was probably 11 years old, and he'd been driving around the little farm in my lap and even by himself with me, and I'm probably saying things that I shouldn't say, but as far as him driving at 11 years old, but I wanted him to learn.
My kids are driving way younger than that, so don't worry.
But I sent him down the road. I was like, hey, run down and just pull the truck up here. Well, he goes down and gets in the truck, and he may have been 12 or so, 11, 12 years old, and I knew he had to back up. Well, he's backing up, and I hear, and I'm like, that wasn't good. And so he comes pulling down, and he had accidentally backed into a tree and crushed one of the brake lights. Yeah. And he's like, Dad, I'm so sorry. Dad, I'm so sorry. Dad, I'm so sorry. And I said, Reed, how old are you? He said, like 11. I said, are you supposed to be driving a truck? And he said, no, sir. I said, then I'll take the blame for that. Yeah. And and it's the perspective of that was on me. Yeah, sure. That wasn't an expectation that he should have to have. And again, none of us are perfect. We're not even going to be perfect in apologizing, right? So we're not going to be perfect in any area. I tell our folks all the time, don't put me on a pedestal because you see the best 35, if I get long-winded, 45 minutes of my week. Yeah. Like, it's easy for me to stand up here and appear like I've got it together, but I don't. Like, you see the best part of me. Yeah. And it's all downhill from here. And so understand that and I'll tell you what really can help change people's perspective is authenticity, is when we're willing to be transparent about our flaws. We're willing to admit the imperfections, and not in a false humility, but in a true way of repentance, but also maybe this can help somebody else. Yeah. Maybe my mistake can keep somebody else from making the mistake, or my mistake can help someone else from falling into condemnation and be able to take a step, in the right direction. Sure, yeah. Versus continuing in the wrong. And so I think that all of that, especially with our family, being able to see that and understand that is so big because, what do we want our family to do? What do we want our sons, our daughters to do when they make a mistake? To own it or put the blame somewhere else? And I think for them to see, we try to avoid mistakes, but they're unavoidable. So many times what you do after the mistake is even bigger than having made the mistake. Or getting it perfect. Yeah. So. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would agree with that big time. So, well, man, listen, I know you've got stuff that you got to do. I've got to get ready to get this place cranked up around here. And we hope you guys have enjoyed the podcast. Absolutely. I know I've enjoyed the conversation and getting to sit here and talk about anything from bow hunting and being drawn on deer and not being able to seal a deal to looking at leading our family and looking at Job, who at first glance is this perfect guy that just lost everything for no reason. Right. But it's the point is to talk about what it looks like to do life. Yes. And this is doing life together. So glad you guys joined us, and
Do it again soon.
Looking forward to it.
There you go.